Hey there everyone, welcome back to night 10 of our Murder Go Round. Tonight is the conclusion of Doughboy420's 4-part miniseries, so sit back, pop some popcorn, and get ready for The Call of Autumn, Part 4, Dawn.
Shit, where am I? Brian said in a panic after waking up in a strange place. Jackson? Jackson, wake up! He called out, violently pushing his unconscious friend until he awoke. What the hell, man? What are you doing in my house? Jackson asked in a sleepy stupor. Unless your mom went all out for Halloween, we ain't at your house, bro, Brian explained, telling his friend to look around. Jackson shook off his sleepy haze and focused on where they were. It looked to be some kind of store, a Halloween store. From what they could see in the massive building, the area around them was covered with various rubber masks, highly detailed and highly expensive. Jackson could afford it, but he never would have bought a $200 mask from the store, no matter how awesome and well-made it looked. Where the hell are we? Hello? Jackson called out into the darkness of the large holiday store. Who's there? An unfamiliar voice came from the next aisle over, and from around the corner came a teenage boy. Who are you? What did you do to us? Jackson demanded, immediately grabbing a hold of the teenager. Easy. My name's Steve. Are we still in a haunted house? Steve introduced himself. Haunted house? No. That was closed. Last I knew, we were in a cemetery, Brian explained. This doesn't look like a haunted house. It looks more like one of those Halloween stores that pop up every year when other stores close, Jackson suggested. Listen, I don't care what this place is. I just want to get out of here, so I'm going to look for an exit. You two are welcome to follow, or you can sit right here with your thumbs up your butts. Your choice, Steve spoke, before turning to walk down the aisle. The two friends simply looked at each other and began following after the younger boy. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the building, Glenn was just starting to regain consciousness, but when he opened his eyes, he nearly screeched in fear, for there was a giant, demonic monstrosity standing over him, its massive claws outstretched, ready to grab him at any moment. He covered his face and cowered in fear, expecting to be snatched up and eaten, but that nightmare never came. Eventually, he looked up to find that the hideous monster standing over him was simply a rubber animatronic lawn decoration. He chuckled and thanked God that no one was around to see him nearly piss himself before he was startled by a scream of an older gentleman coming from somewhere nearby. The 20-something jumped to his feet and quickly sought out the source of the screaming. He found an older man, probably in his 60s, looking around in confusion in an aisle full of wall decorations of black cats, spiders, bats, witches, and skeletons. Where am I? The older man called out in fear. What am I doing here? He then asked into the darkness. Hey, are you going to be okay? Glenn asked him. Who are you? Why did you bring me here? The man asked. Easy. I'm Glenn. I didn't bring you here. I just woke up here, and I'm thinking you did too, Glenn questioned. Yeah? Last I remember, I was in my house, and... The man tried to remember, but he could only see flashes of a small trick-or-treater in a plastic pumpkin mask. Yeah, ditto. I don't remember much of anything either. Someone must have drugged us or something, Glenn reasoned. What would anyone want with me? I'm nothing special. The older man pondered. So, Glenn paused. You know my name. What about yours? He asked the man. Oh, I'm Harold, the older man said, still unsure. All right, Harry. Well, what do you say we find a way out of here? Glenn suggested, and Harold hastily agreed, not wanting to hang around for more than what was necessary. Glenn and Harold walked the aisles of the darkened store, devoid of any sign of life. It was deafeningly quiet. Only the sound of their footsteps could be heard on the tile beneath their feet, until the quiet was broken by the creepy sound of slightly off-key carnival music, making it sound ominous and wrong. "Welcome, welcome, step right up and win your way out," a strange but cheerful voice called out from just around the aisle's bend. The two of them rounded the corner to find a man in an orange-colored suit, with a dark green tie and a top hat, his green eyes shining through a face painted like a pumpkin, his ginger hair sticking out from beneath his hat, nearly matching the tone of the face paint upon him. "Hello there," the man cheerfully said. "We have our first 2 contestants." He yelled into an invisible crowd that then filled the store with the sound of cheers and applause, causing Harold and Glenn to look around and try and find the source of the sound, but they were confused. They could not find it. It didn't sound like a loudspeaker. It sounded like it came from all around them, reverberating through the aisles. "But I didn't," Glenn began to quietly argue, but was shushed by a long, gloved finger. "Nonsense! You want to get out of here, don't you?" the man said, receiving a nod in agreement from Glenn. "Then step right up and play a game to win your way out. Your friends are right around the corner. We're all going to play a little game," the man joyfully explained, still managing to sound ominous with his gleeful words. Are we on TV? Is this a joke? What's with the audience?" Jackson asked as he came around the corner of the aisle before suddenly realizing he was standing on a stage next to his friends and the new people that were also trapped there with them. "The idea of the game is to knock down those pins down there," the man said, pointing down the aisle where a spotlight lit up a bunch of orange bowling pins with green stripes. "Oh, but don't break your pumpkin. That would be against the rules. Who's first? Just topple the pins to win." "This is stupid," Jackson balked. "We have a volunteer," the jolly man said, passing him around jack-o'-lantern to roll down the aisle, but Jackson simply dropped the pumpkin and let it smash on the floor. "Oops," he said mockingly, getting nothing more than a smile from the strange man. "Looks like you've lost this time. Better luck next time," the man said simply before passing a new pumpkin to Glenn. "Silly me with my butterfingers. Guess I just wasn't lucky this time," Jackson mocked further as Glenn stepped up to take his turn. He hurled the jack-o'-lantern down the aisle and knocked down several pins, but unfortunately, he broke his pumpkin in half in the process. "Oh, tough luck, my boy, but you know the rules," the strange game show host said, waving a finger. One by one, each of them took their turn, until finally Harold stepped up to take his shot, but instead of tossing the pumpkin like a bowling ball, when he was past the jack-o'-lantern, he instead placed it upon the ground and walked over to the pins, where he simply just kicked them all over. "Congratulations!" the host praised him. "You win! Keep that up and you'll be out of here in no time," he then added with an odd grin. "But he cheated." "No, he followed the rules exactly as I told him. I never said you needed to use the jack-o'-lantern to topple the pins. I just said, topple the pins to win," the host explained matter-of-factly. "Bullshit," Jackson balked, shrugging off what he was just told. "So, who's ready for the next challenge? All you have to do is win 2. 1, 2, uno, dos, ichi, ni, 2. Who is up for our next game?" he then asked them. But before any of them could answer, they all found themselves somehow transported to a new location. Suddenly they were outside of the store and were in an empty cul-de-sac. The only signs of life were the lights lit up inside people's houses and at their doorsteps. Jackson immediately went to flee the scene, but quickly noticed that they were not outside at all. It was simply made to look that way, but they were still very much inside the massive Halloween-themed shopping center. In Trick or Treat, there is the half where you receive candy when going door to door. That is the treat. But on the opposite end of that coin is the trick. Some deserve a trick, but how do you determine who gets it? Choose your weapon and target wisely, he explained before stepping aside, revealing a small table with a few items atop of it. A roll of toilet paper, a carton of eggs, a can of shaving cream, a bar of soap, a bag of rotten tomatoes, and finally, a paper bag with a lighter. Each of the 5 contestants picked their weapon of choice and began scouting the faux neighborhood for what house they should target. Jackson just wanted to have some fun, and the first house he saw was a nice little ranch house with a tree and a little swing set in the yard. The light was on and someone was obviously home, but Jackson didn't care. He tossed the toilet paper into the tree, then retrieved it when it fell back down, only to toss it over again. He didn't stop until the roll was empty, leaving the tree and the swing set covered with toilet paper. Harold chose the bag of rotten tomatoes. He didn't really know what to be looking for, so he just picked a random house with any lights on and tossed a few tomatoes at the windows where they were all splattered across the surface with a putrid slop sound. Brian, much like Jackson, went wild and just started tossing eggs at several houses, completely disregarding the rules to have some fun. Steve thought about it for a moment and decided to try out a theory. He went up to a house with a light and knocked. An older guy came out with a bowl of candy in hand.
Trick or treat?
Asked the teenager.
Here you go. Happy Halloween,
the older man said, dropping a few butterscotch candies into the bag before turning and closing the door.
Butterscotch? Gross,
Steve said, before making his decision and dropping the paper bag filled with dog poop onto the man's step and lighting it up with the lighter. He then knocked once more and fled the scene, to watch from some bushes as the man came out and stomped the fire out, thus getting his shoe covered with dog feces. He went inside, cussing, while Steve had a laugh. The situation they were in was completely crazy, but he was still having fun with it. Glenn had a similar idea to Steve. He looked around at some of the houses and found one that stood out. The front light was on, and so were the lights inside. Glenn walked up, knocked on the door, but got no answer. He thought that maybe he didn't knock hard enough, and they didn't hear him. So he reached out to ring the doorbell instead, and upon doing so, he got a clear response from the house.
Go away, freeloaders! I don't have any damn candy for freeloaders!
The man yelled from inside, without even opening his door. Glenn had found the house that would be his target. He wasn't sure about doing this, but he took out the bar of soap and drew a big frowny face on the glass of the guy's front window.
All right, time is up. Trick-or-treat is part of the season, both treats and tricks. Each of you chose a weapon and a target. Some of you made some interesting choices, but in the end, only one of you really thought this through. You only give tricks to those that deserve it, and that cruel man that thinks children are freeloaders certainly fits the description. Good choice, Glenn. He was the only one that deserved it. The strange host with the jack-o'-lantern face paint explained, congratulating Glenn on his success.
This is stupid. Why the hell are you playing these games with us? Just let us go,
Jackson demanded.
You can go when you win, and so far you haven't won anything, the host said with a weird grin.
I don't have to stay here. This is a free country and this is kidnapping. Now let me out or I'll lay you out, son,
Jackson demanded again, flaring his chest out to make himself look bigger than he was.
Dude, Glenn nudged his friend. In case you haven't noticed, I don't think we have a choice here, he reasoned with his friend,
getting him to relax for a bit, at least for the time being.
Now, who's up for game number 3?
The host asked, once again transporting them to a new section of the store. This aisle was filled with bags upon bags of candy, lining the shelves from end to end.
You know what your parents always said. Check your candy,
the host said, looking to each of them, lingering for a moment on Harold before moving on.
Always check your candy,
the strange host said, walking around them.
There's another saying. Find a needle in a haystack. That's your challenge. Find the needle, he said,
holding out a hand to present the aisle of candy to the group. The 5 of them looked at each other and then back at the aisle ahead of them before each took off, snatching a bag of candy off the shelf, ripping it open and destroying the candy to look for the needle. Occasionally, 1 or 2 of them would fairly thoroughly check a chocolate before popping it into their mouth. They were hungry and figured that this madman couldn't have possibly poisoned all of this candy, even if he was some sort of magician. For a long time they stood around, ripping open candy, before Jackson once again piped up.
Yeah, screw this shit.
Thanks for the candy, though, he growled, tossing the chocolate into his mouth before throwing the wrapper at the face of the host, where it bounced off of the unblinking game show host's countenance, before he then flipped him the bird. The host smiled, but he wasn't smiling at the gesture from Jackson. Instead, he smiled when Brian did not thoroughly check his candy before popping it into his mouth. In the hurry of trying to find the needle, he did not properly chew, and swallowed as quickly as he could to move on to the next, but in doing so, he ingested something he shouldn't have. Brian gripped at his neck and coughed a bit, gagging up a small splatter of blood onto his hand. At first, he looked at his hand, and then coughed again. More blood came. He could feel something caught in his throat, and he began to panic, trying to cough and dislodge the foreign object, but in doing so, he just did more damage, eventually causing the needle to push its way out of his skin, causing the blood to freely flow, and his friends and fellow contestants could only look on in complete horror as he drowned in his own blood. "We have a winner," the host said, raising an arm of the dead corpse upon the ground. "Oh, but it appears though our contestant is dead," he then added, dropping the lifeless arm back to the floor. "Disqualified," he then yelled, before they were once again teleported to yet another new location, leaving the corpse of their friend behind. "Brian, what the hell? What did you do?" Jackson yelled. "Sorry, he couldn't cut it," the host said, pondering his words for a moment. Or, then again, maybe he could, he joked, giving a maniacal and strange-sounding laugh. "Man, fuck you," Jackson growled before popping the host in the face. Once again, the host did not flinch. He did not blink. He just stood there with a smile and took the hit, where a trail of blood began to leak from his pointed nose and down his face. Jackson was going to hit him again, but instead stepped back for a moment upon realizing that his punch did nothing to affect the strange host. What the fuck?" he began to say, completely freaked out by the man in front of him. "Are you all ready for the next game?" the host asked, ignoring the blood running over his lips and grinning teeth. "Fuck you! Our friend is dead! Let us out of here!" Jackson demanded, still trying to act tough, even though he was completely scared shitless on the inside. 2 games. You have to win 2 games. 1, 2. Uno, dos, ichi, ni, 2. And once again, I might add, you have won nothing, the host explained again. "What happens if we lose?" Glenn asked, not sure that he wanted to hear the answer. "No worries. I'll put you right back where I found you. But there has to be a winner. A lesson must be learned," the host answered him. "Oh, so it's like that show where everything is made up and the points don't matter. Gotcha," Jackson said, rolling his eyes. "For the next challenge, I propose a pumpkin carving contest. Whoever impresses the judges with their carving wins. It's that simple," the man said, presenting a table for each of them along with the tools for the trade that they would need to carve the pumpkin. "Fuck you," Jackson yelled, grabbing a knife off the table closest to him and stabbing it into the unflinching host. "What?" Jackson asked in confusion, pulling the knife back with a click, realizing that it was a fake knife with a dull blade that retracted back into the handle. "God damn it!" he shouted, thrusting the knife downward toward the pumpkin in frustration, expecting to break the knife or the pumpkin with the blow, but instead, the knife stuck into the top of the pumpkin, completely intact once more. "What the hell is going on?" Jackson asked, a bit of fear in his voice. "Carve your pumpkin. The judges will decide," the host explained. "Who are the judges?" Glenn questioned. "Me, myself, and I." "Figures. That's not bias or anything," Jackson grumbled as he began carving his pumpkin. The others followed suit, but Steve knew that he had this one in the bag. He wasn't just good with a knife, but he was good with pumpkin carving too. He'd honed his skills year after year, carving monsters from horror movies and even comic book and video game characters. He figured he would easily be able to win with the brownie points of carving the silhouette of the host over the backdrop of the full moon. Jackson carved a crude, basic jack-o'-lantern face that looked like it was done by a child carving a pumpkin for the first time. Glenn put a little more effort into the face that he carved, making round eyes with indentations at the edge for pupils, along with a mouth full of teeth making a big smile. Harold went a little more abstract with his carving, making the eyes two different shapes with a half smile, half frown. "Good work, everyone. I like them all. I mean, look at my face," the host joked, holding a hand to his face as if he were presenting it to an audience. "But," the host paused, looking at the pumpkins, stopping for quite some time to look at Steve's, making him even more sure that he would win. "I have a soft spot for the classics. Jackson wins," he exclaimed, holding up the winning jack-o'-lantern. "What? That's bullshit," Steve growled to himself. "And speaking of the classics, for our next game, I propose a classic itself. 2 truths and a lie. The only catch is, I tell the truths and lies, and you decide what to do," the host began. "Are you ready?" he asked once more, but before anyone could answer, he went into his speech. "Steve is 67 years old. He's a pretty good pumpkin carver, even though he didn't win. And he murdered all of his friends," the host said joyfully. "What?" Jackson said, unsure of what he had just heard. Jackson has almost 500,000 followers on social media. He's a proud father of 36 children, and his content has caused more pain and suffering than the rest of the contestants could ever inflict." The strange host chuckled at the prospect. "What the fuck?" "Glenn thinks he's Jackson's friend, but Jackson keeps him around for comedic relief for the channel. He actually survived through World War I and II, and he's been a willing participant in his friend's cruelty, even though he finds much of the content to be hurtful and disturbing." The host grinned through his revelation. Glenn just sighed and looked down in disgust with himself. Harold here is legitimately 67 years old. He is a bodybuilder during the day, but on Halloween night, he poisons children's candy for fun," the host said, his demeanor changing as he glared directly at Harold, his grin changing to a curled grimace. "What? You kill kids?" Jackson turned to Harold, knife still in hand. "I didn't kill any kids. I just made them sick," Harold tried to explain, immediately recognizing the danger that he was in. "Oh, so that makes it better?" Jackson growled at the older man. "No, please," the man begged, but Jackson was drunk with anger. Jackson didn't even think about it. He saw the evil in front of him and lashed out at it, stabbing the shocked older man in the chest. Harold looked into the younger man's eyes pleadingly before he fell backwards off the man's knife and onto the floor, holding his chest and staring blankly off into nothingness. You killed him," Glenn said in shock, not knowing how to react to the situation. Steve reacted the best way he knew how. He knew it was kill or be killed, so the team lunged at the man that was not much older than him, knife in hand, trying to slash and stab at Jackson. Jackson reacted accordingly and returned the attack. Both of them got in some good cuts, slashing arms and stomachs, before finally Jackson managed to stick his knife into Steve's neck, where he immediately dropped his knife and gripped his wound in a desperate attempt to save himself, but Jackson would not allow it to happen. He made sure to twist the blade as he withdrew it, being sure to make the wound larger, assuring that there was no chance of survival. Jackson then turned towards his friend with a strange look in his eye. "I'm sorry, Glenn," Jackson said before walking towards his friend. "Jackson? Dude, what are you doing?" Glenn questioned. "Only one of us can win," Jackson explained, swiping his knife at Glenn, who managed to dodge the attack. "Dude, stop!" Glenn yelled, backing away from his friend. "It's all right, Glenn. I'll be sure to put in a in memory of message for you and Brian at the end of every video, so that fans will always remember you. They love me. I'm important. I have to win for my fans." Jackson attempted to reason with Glenn. "You're important?" Glenn questioned, finally realizing that he wasn't a friend to Jackson at all. Jackson didn't care about him or anyone else for that matter. He only wanted views. "You're not important. People don't love you. You're a mouth breather.
Neckbeard audiences only want to see people hurt because they hurt and have nothing better to do with their lives. No one cares about you, Jackson. I thought I did, but you never cared about me. Just what I could do for you. That's all it ever was, wasn't it? Well, not anymore, Jackson. I'm done, Glenn said, dropping his knife and backing away from him. Jackson once again attempted to stab his former friend, but Glenn used his own momentum against him, pushing him to the side and onto the ground. "I'll kill you!" Jackson yelled, attempting to get back up, but he was stopped by the host of their horrible game show when the knife in his hand simply turned into a balloon sword that popped on impact with Glenn's chest. What are you?" Jackson asked the strange man. "I am the child trick-or-treating on Halloween," the strange host said, his body cracking and twisting as he changed into a small boy with a plastic pumpkin mask. "I am the convict in the night," he continued, his body shifting again, stretching out, and his mask elongated with it, becoming more angular, and his clothes changed as well, forming himself into a strange man that Jackson and his friends had seen earlier that night. "The candy you are given on Halloween night is my body, and the cup of cider poured for you is my blood. I am the dusk. I am the dawn. I am the call of autumn. I am the spirit of the season," the host explained as he twisted slowly back into his original self, his eyes now burning with a raging fire, as if the painted pumpkin upon his face was a real jack-o'-lantern with a roaring blaze inside as he glared at Jackson. "But," the man added, his tone changing and eyes turning to a green flame that then calmed and solidified back into his normal green eyes. "We have a winner. A lesson has been learned," he said with a smile. Jackson smirked, figuring that he'd taken out the trash and won the game, but he was stunned when the host raised Glenn's hand instead and declared him the winner. "What? But I did everything! Me!" Jackson said, puffing his chest out again and thumping his hands against it as he spoke to accentuate that it was him that did all the work. "That's why you lost, Jackson," Glenn explained to his former friend. "I would have followed you through hell, man. And to be honest, I kind of did. You were the devil and I was one of your demons. And we put other people through hell. That's why I won. Because I realized we belong here. In hell," Glenn revealed, explaining the truth of their fate to Jackson. But No! Jackson stammered in shock, but was interrupted by the host. "Thank you for playing. Now it's time for everyone to get their prize. But before you go, I just might add..." The host paused. "Happy Halloween." Just as he said that, he returned to Jackson to where he had found him, back inside his body, torn open in the cemetery by the angry spirits of the dead that he and his friends had disturbed. The police found Brian right beside him, his throat torn out. "Man, I've never seen a bear do anything like this," one officer claimed, standing over the two bodies. "Yeah, we got a live one over here," another officer yelled from a distance away, calling the medics over to help a very beat-up and cut-up young man. Are you okay? Can you tell us your name?" the officer asked, rushing to the man's aid. "Glenn. It's Glenn."
Just remember, come back tomorrow for a cadaverous convoy. Hope to see you then. Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here,
consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.